Welcome to another lecture on brand management. In the lectures that we have covered so far, we have come a long way, and that long way comprises the brand associations, the brand management activity per se, and of course, how brands become a leader brand and what steps, what intermediate steps are required for any brand to become a leader brand. However, we are still discussing brand associations, and particularly the last two classes where we discussed brand associations as raw material and then how to mine those brand associations is something that is a very fundamental activity that any brand manager or any organization, business organization which are owner of brands must do. So, while we have come a long way, we are still at the incipient stages of brand management activity. Incipient stages because we haven't yet come to the operational part of brand management as an activity. We are not talking right now, or we haven't yet spoken about what really a brand manager does on a daily basis. What we are talking about right now is what a brand manager should do. What are the raw material? What is at the disposal of the brand manager that he must use to perform his activity more effectively. So, therefore, while we have come a long way, we are still at the raw material stage. We are still trying to unearth, we are trying to find, we are trying to identify, and we are trying to extract the raw material which we will process with the help of various tools, activities, conceptual analysis, and then actual marketing activity. So, that is where we are right now, and today we will take one step forward and see how those brand associations, if you recollect, there are 4 types of brand associations: visual, verbal, emotional, and sensory. How do those 4 brand associations get organized inside our mind? One way in which they get organized is, as we have seen in the last session, that they get organized in clusters. They also get organized as symbols. They equally get organized as language or lexicon that is peculiar to that brand or peculiar to that industry. So, while brand associations get organized in these manner, slowly emerged one tool which was actually a part of the subject called psychology, and from there this new tool emerged which was applied to the field of brand studies or brand management, and it became a very powerful tool to analyze these brand associations and then subsequently other abstract and useful constructs. And that concept is called brand iceberg. Now, you can see the title of this lecture is Unearthing Brand Iceberg. As we see that this has 3 terms: unearthing, brand, and iceberg. Here we are introducing you to 2 new terms, unearthing and iceberg. Brand, of course, we are familiar by now. Now, before we go to unearthing, let us look at iceberg. Now, what is an iceberg? And you can see on the slide this picture. It is very obvious that an iceberg is quite a big body of ice and object of ice, and a large part of it is actually submerged under water. Now, various people say different ratios that is submerged underwater. Some say it is 3/4, some say it is 5/6, some say it is 2/3, but regardless of the ratio, what we understand that a large part of an iceberg is submerged under water, and therefore, a fraction of it is only visible. So, as you can see in this picture, this iceberg has only a fraction, which could be 1/3 or 1/4 of the whole iceberg, which is visible. So, here what we are saying is that brand is also like an iceberg, alright. So, a large part of brand is actually submerged under water, and what you see is only a fraction of it, only 1/3 of it or 1/4 of what brand really is. So, in today's lecture, what we are going to do is to unearth that iceberg, that brand iceberg. We will try to bring to the surface or turn the iceberg around and see what really is inside, because what is outside is easy to see, it is obvious, we can see it all around us, but what is inside the brand is something that we will try to unravel today. But before we go to brand iceberg, let us see where does this idea of iceberg come from. From where did we borrow this concept of iceberg and apply it to the field of brand management. So, as I told you earlier, the idea of iceberg came from the idea of personality. Now, if you are familiar with the basics of psychology, you would know that in psychology we say personality is also like an iceberg. So, let us go back to the previous picture. The discipline of psychology says that our personality is also like an iceberg. So, just the way we said about brand, the same thing can be said about our personality as well, that only 1/3 of our personality is visible and 2/3 of our personality is hidden, is submerged beneath the surface or submerged in the water. Now, if you see this picture, which belongs more to psychology than brand management or marketing, this is because we need to understand how the idea of brand iceberg operates in psychology, how the idea of personality iceberg operates in the field of psychology, and then we will transpose that to the field of brand management, so that we get a better idea as to what really a brand iceberg is. Now, let us look at this picture little more closely. You can see that there is an iceberg and then there is a surface. So, there is a green line you can see which is running across the iceberg. So, that is the surface, and the part of the iceberg which is above the green line is the visible part, and that part which is below the green line is the invisible part. Now, you can see that the part below the green line is divided into two parts. One is pre-conscious and second is unconscious. Pre-conscious is also called subconscious. So, do not confuse between pre-conscious and subconscious, both are one and the same, and conscious remains at the green line level and above. So, it is at the conscious level that personality interacts with the world. When we come to brand iceberg, we will say that it is at the green line level or at the conscious level, brand interacts with the consumers. In this case, what we are saying is at the green line level, the personality interacts with the outside world. So, that is the conscious, and then we have pre-conscious or subconscious. What is the difference between conscious, pre-conscious and unconscious? I will try and explain. Pre-conscious or subconscious is that part of the mind which can be made accessible with some effort. Alright. So, for if we jog our memory a little, if someone helps us, for example, when we are if we are trying to remember our childhood and we are not able to remember much, and then our mother may come to our assistance and she may tell that this is an event that happened when you were young, and that may trigger a bell and we will be able to remember, yes, that exactly, that really happened to me when I was young. Similarly, when some cues are given, when some suggestions are made, we are able to access that part of our mind which seemingly is forgotten. So, that part of mind which is accessible with some effort is called preconscious or subconscious. Then we have the unconscious part of our mind, where most of our experiences which we do not process consciously, which we are not aware of, to which we do not attend with some effort, most of such experiences are pushed down below in our mind, and they go so deep within that we do not even know that they exist. They come together and form our unconscious. It must be remembered that in psychology it is said that by the time a child is about 4 years old, his personality is more or less formed. And if I try and if I ask you what is the earliest memory you have of your life, perhaps you would be able to go back to not beyond 4 years or at the most 3 years. You may not be able to remember anything of your life which happened before you were 3 or 4 years. So, when psychology says that at the age of 4 your personality is more or less formed, what it means is that the experiences that we have had before attaining the age of 4 has constituted our personality. And what kind of experiences do we really have before we attain the age of 4? We must remember we spent 9 months of our life inside our mother's womb. That is something that none of us have any idea about. We can know a little bit from our biology books that this is what every fetus, every child goes through when it is in the mother's womb. So, that experience is deeply held inside our unconscious. We have all forgotten that experience. However, it is not that that experience has gone away somewhere. It is very much there. It is inside us, it is inside you, it is inside me. So, I will just give an example. Say a child is in the bed and it is probably playing because something is kept on the cradle, it is looking at the toy and it is playing, and it is perhaps evening or night, and suddenly current goes off, electricity goes off, and the whole room is filled with darkness. Now, what will the child think? Child does not know that it is in a house. Child does not know that its mother, its father, everyone is living in that house. Child does not have access to this knowledge. What the child is worried about is whether it will get sustenance in the form of its mother's breast. And moment the electricity goes off and the whole room is filled with darkness, child is gripped with fear. Child is full of uncertainty and anxiety whether mother will come and pick him up again, will the mother give him the source of his sustenance, which is mother's milk, once again. And child feels terrible fear. Child feels that the whole darkness is coming to annihilate the child, and in that fear child gives a wild and loud shriek. It makes a noise, it starts crying, and so on, so forth. And then of course somebody comes and perhaps lights a candle or switches on the light, or the current itself comes back, and mother, if she is responsive, if she is alert, she will come back quickly and comfort the child, and child will be fine. However, that deep fear and the loud shriek that the child had given when the current went off does not go away from the child's mind, it remains inside, and that shriek, that fear of darkness, that fear of annihilation remains, and later as the child grows up, it surfaces, it manifests itself in the form of fear of uncertainty, fear of unknown, and so on, so forth. So, this is how unconscious functions, and this is how it functions even when it comes to brands or brand iceberg. Before we move further, we must also look at these three ideas, these three words that are mentioned in this slide, and they are id, ego, and superego. Now, a brief analysis of these three terms is necessary so that we understand how they operate in the context of brand management also. Now, id is something that is primitive within us, primitive, that is childlike, that is something that belongs to the field of emotions, something that is very basic. For example, imagine a child, or remember when you were a child, or look at people around you and look at the children who are 1 year, 2 year old children, and look at their behavior. When they get something that they like, they will be wildly happy and they will start playing with immediately. If they are unhappy, they will start crying. When they are angry, they will start hitting at you. When they are happy, their joy will know no bounds. They will be angry when their friends take away their toys, and they will be happy when they get a new toy. The same experience happens to all of us when we are young. So, it is something that is at a very basic level. It is also, id is something related to our relationship with our parents. So, when a boy child is growing up, it has an inordinate desire to be with his mother, and he wants his mother always to himself. Alright, because one, of course, that it is mother is the source of sustenance, but also boy realizes that mother is of another gender, and he feels enormous attraction towards his mother, and he sees that his father is a competitor to her mother's affection. To his mother's affection. He sees that his mother cannot be always with him because she has to go and take care of his father also. So, in this way, he develops a jealousy towards his father because his father takes away his mother from him. This, in the field of psychology, is called Oedipus complex. Something similar is also seen when it comes to the relationship between a girl child or a daughter and father. Daughter considers mother as the rival to the affection of her father, and therefore, she considers her mother as the competitor, and this in psychology is called Electra complex. Now, in brand, it is difficult to distinguish between Oedipus complex and Electra complex, but one must remember that such complexes operate even within the field of brand management. Second concept is super ego. Now, super ego is something that is culturally determined, that is forbidding. It's a concept that grows as we grow in our life. The first learnings or first forbidden things that we learn from our society is from the family. In the family, we are told that this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, do this, do not do this, and most of it comes from mother father, grandparents and so on. So, initially we experience this superego, which is a forbidding kind of an entity which says do this and do not do this. This is right and this is wrong. We experience this in the family first, and later on we start experiencing this in school, in society, at workplace and so on. So, anything that tells us that this is acceptable and this is not acceptable comes from this idea called superego. And in our personality, there is always this fight between id and superego. Id will say that I want this and I want it now, whereas superego will say no, you cannot have it because it is not right, because you do not have the money. I want a Mercedes car. Superego will say no, you cannot have Mercedes car because you do not have the money to buy the Mercedes car. Or it will say I want to make love to this beautiful girl. Superego will say no, you cannot, because she is too far above your station or below your station in society. So, in these ways id and superego fight with one another. And how does one move forward? One moves forward because one has to take decision. Should I do this? Should I not do this? And only by making a decision one can move forward. So, this moving forward is facilitated by this idea called ego. And what does ego do? Ego balances the demands of id and superego, and it makes a decision that yes, in this case we will accept id. I want to have an ice cream and I want to have an ice cream now, even though it is midnight and it is very cold, yet I want to have an ice cream. Superego says no, you cannot have because you will fall sick, but ego decides it's okay, I can take the risk of having an ice cream at midnight and disregard the risk of falling ill, and then ego decides okay, I go ahead and have an ice cream. Similarly, ego takes a decision whenever there is a fight between id and superego. So, this is how the mind of an individual works. This is the structure of the personality, and a personality which is largely hidden. So, again as I said in the previous class, if you think that inside the mind there are three structures and if you cut it open you will see that one part is id, one part is ego and other part is superego, there is no such thing. It is a conceptual structure, it is not a real structure. This is something that we should keep in mind when we discuss brand iceberg. So, personality iceberg has these three parts: conscious, pre-conscious and unconscious, and personality iceberg also has ego, superego and id. Thank you very much.